Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So a hell of a lot has happened in the last 5 or so months in the world of Girl Defined. In that time, Kristen has had a baby girl. Girl Defined as a company have decided to downsize and close their merch shop, so it seems like financially they're maybe not in the best position, and also career-wise maybe the women are just looking at doing different things. Dave also announced that he was in the process of deconstructing and didn't really consider himself a Christian anymore, but didn't get to the point of using the word atheist. And Kristen and Bethany have been promoting their most transphobic book yet, which is coming out in December. Meanwhile, Bethany and Dave also collaborated with atheist YouTubers and ex-Mormons, I believe. Zelf on the Shelf, which was clearly a well-meaning move on Zelf's part, but sadly ended up being utterly disappointing for a lot of us watching. I think a lot of us were expecting to see Zelf kindly but firmly question Bethany and pushing back against some of the harmful stances she's had before, especially in relation to homophobia, transphobia, her Nazi family history that she's celebrated. But instead, what we primarily got was cutesy videos of them and Bethany drinking out of straws and doing TikTok dances together, and Bethany being called an actual angel on the same day that she was promoting her new transphobic book. And the YouTube videos we did get were just a bit pointless. They lacked any real depth, and they didn't really show that much development on Bethany's part, I don't think, and I kind of felt they were unnecessary. I think for me personally, it was the promotion of the YouTube content that was an issue there. So I don't know about anyone else, but it's a little bit scary to open up Instagram and see someone that you previously respected and trusted on your feed collabing with someone who actively thinks you're going to hell for being who you are. And it's not like you're seeing them push back against these harmful beliefs. Instead, they're doing silly little TikTok dances with this person who has built their whole career on fighting to have your bodily autonomy taken away, telling you to suppress your sexuality, and saying that so many things about yourself are evil and wrong. And it's not like Bethany used to think that stuff and now she's changed her mind and apologized for it and is making amends. She still believes that stuff. It's just now she's like, oh, well, I don't personally hate this particular queer person, so that's progress, right? And it is, but it's not really enough to justify how she was being portrayed.
That was really magical, just casually. That's fun.
Yep. What you're doing?
Okay, I'm learning to make drinks. I actually don't really know how to make anything.
He's learning to make drinks. He doesn't really know, but look what a good job he's doing.
Yeah, I'm trying to open this. It's taking me a while.
I think ultimately I and a few other thousand other people weren't okay with seeing her giggling away on our Instagram feeds, being presented as some harmless little girl when she thinks we're all going to hell. It made me very uncomfortable. Not everyone thought this though. Some people called the video collaboration a revolution. Personally, I didn't. I found it disappointing and, like I say, unnecessary. While before we assumed that Dave wasn't quite as harmful as Bethany in terms of bigoted beliefs, I found those videos actually showed that he actually is. He just manages to wrap it up in a friendlier front. I think I felt that for all I've given Bethany and Dave the benefit of the doubt over the years, and especially in my video like the saga of Bethany Beal, I was saying how far she's come, how much she's improved, how I can really see her changing and doing good. I kind of felt like that video collab was actually a little bit of a step back, because it's like every time I keep expecting them to do better and do something good, they just keep letting us all down. I fully support helping people to grow and change and do better and be better educated, and I think Zelf's premise of going there to help Bethany and Dave with that was a really, really good one, and it's a commendable one. I just don't think that they managed it, and I don't think that the conversations as part of that needed to be on camera. Because as it stands, the end result that we got wasn't about two people growing and learning from two other people. It just ended up being two videos of promotion for a couple of bigots who still hold their bigoted views. You also have Paul of Paul and Morgan congratulating the collaboration and, you know, saying how good it was and stuff like that. And I just feel like if you have Paul on your side, then maybe you should rethink everything, because that's not someone you want praising you. The thing is, though, I'm not mad at Zelf for what they did, and I can't be mad at them because they're just making the same mistakes that I've made in the past, and I do know exactly what it's like, and I think they do have this opportunity to grow and learn from what they did wrong here. I think sometimes when people are nice to you as an individual, you think this must mean they're a good person, and you project all the high hopes that you have for them onto them. You know, you want them to change, so you think they've changed, and you tell people they've changed, even if they haven't necessarily. And I think especially when you have a large platform, you don't realize how much that can negatively impact your viewers, especially if you're new to having a large platform. So my example of where I went wrong with a very similar situation was something like 5 years ago now. I was in a really bad place in my life. I'd had this awful mental breakdown as a result of harassment and bullying, and I'd broken up with my partner of 4 years. I tried dating someone new who just cheated on me, and I was struggling in like every way imaginable. Financially, I had nothing. I was a mess, right? And there was this other YouTuber who lived near me in London called Rose of Dawn, who was really nice to me. She reached out. She's like, I'm so sorry for the harassment you faced, blah, blah, blah. And I watched a few of her videos, and I thought she seemed nice. And I was like, even though we disagree on some big things politically, I think we could be friends, and it's really nice to have someone be kind to me, right? Didn't quite realize how many things we disagreed on politically and socially, if I'm being honest. I had this naive, oh, it's okay, I can change her kind of thing going on. I was like, it's totally okay to be friends with people of differing political opinions because we can disagree while still being friendly and blah. And that was my mindset. So I went out for a glass of wine with her, and like I say, I was lonely, I was desperate for friends. And while to this day I still think it's okay to listen to and try and understand the thoughts of people you don't agree with, I do think that in that particular case it was wrong of me to then post a selfie of us on Instagram, because yeah, some of the views she had did hurt people in my audience, and it was irresponsible of me to just like show her like that, you know? And now, don't get me wrong, she was nowhere near the levels of like Bethany Beal, but she did have some judgmental things to say about non-binary people, and she was a little bit of a transmedicalist, and I didn't like that. But again, I went in with this mindset of like, oh, it's fine, I can change her, I can totally fix her. No, never occurred to me that maybe she was thinking the same things about me. You know, maybe she was thinking, I can change her, I can fix her. You know? So, listened to people, learnt my lesson, and it was hard to hear, it absolutely was. But I decided that it was better to stay lonely for a few more months than risk hurting thousands of people just because I was desperate for friends. You know, that was a selfish mindset, and I decided not to go down it. So I met her once, we didn't hang out again, and I haven't really spoken to her since, except maybe liking some pictures of her cat on social media, because you can't hate anyone's cat, right? And looking back, I do think that was the right decision. It's hard to see that in the moment when you're there and you're desperately trying to befriend someone and make them better. It's hard to see that that's maybe not necessarily the right thing to do for you and your audience. But now, looking back, I know I have a lot more non-binary people in my audience now than I did back then. One of my best friends is non-binary and I love them to bits. And it's so much easier to see now that standing up for their rights is far more important in the grand scheme of things than trying to build a friendship with someone you have fundamental disagreements with just because you're lonely or you think you can fix them or any other naive thoughts like that. And I feel like when you are a public figure yourself, like I am now, like I was at the time, like Zelf is now, I feel like you do have a bit more of a responsibility to be careful about what other public figures you're promoting, and learning how to do that is not something that comes naturally or easily. There's no rule book that you're given when you start making YouTube videos. There's no guidelines that say, hey, you need to behave like this, this and this, and this is your responsibility to the... You don't know. You have to learn as you go, and it is hard. Especially when you have like social issues, and like me, I'm autistic. I can't say for Sam and Tanner and Zelf, I don't know, but again, it's not like this is something you grow up knowing. And on a larger scale, I think it's impossible to know every single thing about every single person you ever work or collaborate or socialize with. So I'd never be mad at someone for like I don't know, going to a party and everyone's like, oh, get this big group of people together for a photo, and you take a photo together, and let's say you're in the photo and there's someone the other end down the line, like, you don't need to know everything about them to be seen in a photo with them. You can't blame someone for something like that. But I do think, again, that's very different to actively seeking out someone like Bethany Beal, watching her promote transphobic content in the here and now, and on the exact same day telling people that Bethany's changed, she's an absolute angel, when what we're seeing is the opposite of that. Does that make sense? Anyway, rambling a lot. That said, this whole kind of like responsibility to your audience and trying to promote the right people and learning how to deal with people that you have these fundamental disagreements with is something that has taken me years to learn, and I'm still not perfect at it. I still don't really know what I'm doing. So I can't be mad at Sam and Tana of Zelf and the Shelf for being a bit naive in that respect. I'm disappointed in them, and I'm disappointed in the collab they did with Bethany and Dave, but I'm not mad about it. And I think this is more going to be a learning experience for them, and I hope that as time passes they can look back and see that how they marketed that collaboration was completely inappropriate, and they're going to learn from that and do better next time, you know? I thoroughly believe they were acting from a really good place. It's just their execution wasn't what it needed to be, and sadly it ended up hurting a lot of people in the process. That said, I just felt like this video needed that saying because I haven't really seen any big creators talking about it, and it's something that has been dwelling on my mind for the last however many months. Yes, but that said, that isn't what this video is about. What this video is about is that Bethany Beal's sex course for Christian women has had an update with 2 new lessons being added. And in this we have actually seen some changes from Bethany, and let me tell you, I am shocked. Thoroughly shocked. We've seen plenty of big general changes from Bethany over the last few months. She's spending less time on the internet, which is commendable, more time with her kids, which is commendable. She generally seems a bit happier, if I'm being honest, which is fantastic to see. And like I say, she's also added these 2 new lessons to her sex course. Thankfully, I can still access these at no extra cost from what I paid for that original course content access thing, so we're going to be looking at them today. The 2 new lessons are Dealing with Sexual Betrayal in Marriage with Bonnie Burns and Sexual Desire, Self-Pleasure and Oral Sex with Bethany Phillips. Now, Bonnie Burns, who I still keep wanting to call Bobby Burns, is someone we've seen a couple of times in Bethany's courses and videos and stuff before, and I'll be honest, I don't like her very much. I do find her undereducated, I do find her not knowledgeable enough about the topics she speaks on, and ultimately she gives a lot of advice which is really harmful to women. That said, I'm going into this with an open mind, more than happy to be proven wrong, and we're going to get there, because even though that lesson is first, I'm going to cover it at the end of the video because I find the other one far more interesting and I want to give you the exciting stuff up front, right? This second video with Bethany Phillips is the one where we can see the biggest change in Bethany and the most progress. Like, there is genuine progress to be seen here, although maybe not in the most pleasant way. Like it's good to see the change, I just kind of wish we didn't have to see it in this way. You'll know when we get to it. If you've seen any of my other content on Bethany, on Girl Defined, on Bethany's sex courses, you'll know that Bethany and her sister Kristen have always been absolutely, entirely against masturbation in all of their content, in their YouTube videos, in their books, in this very course, in Bethany's other course, which is the sex course for single women, in their downloadable PDFs online. It's all completely against masturbation.
Kristen has been super open with her own journey, and also we've written a book together on this topic, and she has kind of become an expert in this area of helping people find freedom.
So entering my teen years, those early teen years, actually my struggle was even before that. So just naturally as a young girl, young woman, exploring my body, figuring things out and going, oh wow, this feels really good. So masturbation became a habitual habit for me. And at the time, I honestly was so naive. I didn't even know it was something sexual. Like, I had no idea what it was. And so my struggle persisted though, and I was just so ashamed. For me, my struggle with masturbation was very much lust fueled, fantasy driven. My heart was just fueled with a lot of impure thoughts, imaginations, things maybe I had seen glimpses of, and I would just kind of extrapolate on those in my mind. And so it was definitely not a pure act that I was engaging in. And so for me, there was just a lot of shame in that, in realizing like, wow, I have lust in my heart and I confess it to God, but then I continue to struggle. And I was too ashamed to tell anyone. I didn't even know who to tell.
My husband, he had never struggled with pornography. And so when we were like dating and engaged, I just thought I was the worst sinner than him. I thought I was more sexually broken. I thought, oh, he doesn't have any issues. And then especially when we were struggling with like sexual sin ourselves as a couple, I thought, well, it's my fault because I'm the one who was addicted to porn and he never was. And man, what a burden to place on yourself. I'm talking with you guys, sharing my story, but it's not like I'm this perfect person who is completely free from porn. And what I mean by that is like my biggest temptation comes when I can't sleep. That's just always been my biggest trigger. And so last night, my kids like were crying and crying. And I'm like, I just want to sleep. And I couldn't fall asleep. And so that little temptation came into my head of like, oh, well, if you just looked at porn and masturbated, you'd fall right to sleep. And like, I had to fight against it. And I had to pray, God, take that away, and just work through all my different healing processes that I've created for myself. And ultimately, I didn't turn to it. And I praise God for that. But like, guys, it just comes back at us. Satan doesn't want us to have victory. He doesn't want us to live in freedom.
However, we did see a little hint of something a bit different earlier in this sex course for married women, wherein one of the speakers spoke not about masturbation, but about self-cultivation, which is basically masturbation, but instead of doing it because you want to learn about your own body and feel good, you do it so you can learn about your body to teach your husband and make sex better for him. That's apparently how you get round it and stop it being morally sinful and wrong, right?
So here's the breakdown, is that we spend a lot of years believing that masturbation is wrong. And so any self-touching is wrong. Don't do it. And there is no scripture, that says masturbation is wrong. However, there are lots of reasons to be very cautious about what it is to be involved in that act. And so that is for another conversation. But I think self-cultivation is what I like to call it, is different than masturbation. Masturbation is touching for stimulus and for orgasm by yourself, for yourself, in a secretive, isolated way. Self-cultivation is a way to get to know your feminine body so that you love it and you think it's good and you like it and you're comfortable with it and you are aware of it and you're educated about what is where and what is down there. I had no education about my body, no idea what was down there. I mean, I hear a lot of women get married, they're like, I didn't know I had a clitoris, the husband doesn't know. And so if you don't know about your body, it's hard to be able to share your body. It's kind of like you have a really special gift, but it just stays in the corner and you never even opened it. And so you can't really share it with anyone because you were too scared of it. And your body is a gift and God has given it to us and we don't have to be scared of it. And so self-cultivation is simply just kind of like self-education. You can think of it that way, getting to know your body. You can touch yourself down there in order to be like, okay, this stroke, this way feels good. And then the point is then you go teach your husband.
It's pro-masturbation, but with a little sprinkling of misogyny on top. This lesson, however, with Bethany Phillips is different. She is pro-masturbation for the sake of masturbation, but she doesn't like to call it masturbation. She likes to call it self-pleasure. Exactly the same act, but in a new, less sinful packaging. Like I say, it's really nice to see our Bethany, Girl Defined Bethany, making progress like this and promoting these women who are pro-masturbation, but it's also frustrating that she's doing that and making money off it, while still having one foot on the other side, where she is promoting and making money off anti-masturbation videos and content. She's playing both sides and it's really hypocritical. But let's review these lessons and watch them together and have a talk about them and talk about the good things and correct some of the misinformation. So the first one we're going to look at is sexual desire, self-pleasure and oral sex with Bethany Phillips. And the first thing I just have to say here is just about the thumbnail because I can't stop myself. The dress that Bethany Phillips is wearing in this thumbnail, it might not be to some people's taste, but I love it. It is beautiful and I want this dress. Had to be said before anything else. What is less good, however, is that this lesson and the entire lesson has Bethany Phillips here barely on camera. She's like falling off the screen. Whoever set this up and positioned it, why? I know tech issues happen in general, but this is a course some people have had to pay hundreds of pounds and dollars for. You could at least have your guests in frame properly, or you could have tried to realign it when editing. It's very annoying. Because we have two Bethanies in this episode, it could get a little confusing, so I'm going to refer to them as Guest Bethany for Bethany Phillips and Our Bethany for Bethany Beal of Girl Defined.
Bethany, thank you so much for joining us for the Ultimate Sex Course for Christian Women. We have so many women in this course who have been looking forward to this session that I had promised, and we had a ton of technical difficulties with the first round, and they're like, please, when is this one going to release? I've literally had people emailing me, and so I'm so glad we're making this happen. But for those who don't know about her sacred sexuality and all the work that you're doing for women and men in the space of sex and intimacy, just introduce yourself and share a little bit about your passion for women and sex.
Yeah, so my name is Bethany Phillips. I am 34 years old. I live in San Diego, California, and I have always had a desire to be in this world of sex, sexuality, sensuality. I was 18 years old when I told my mom I wanted to be a sex therapist, and that wasn't a great conversation. She was like, "You're 18. What do you know about sex?" And so I let that dream sort of, honestly float away. Like I forgot about it for a long time.
Now, I have to tell you something quite embarrassing, and that is when I first heard her talking like this, I got quite excited because apparently I misheard everything.
2 years ago, Karen, my partner, and I, we went to a women's retreat in LA, and it was a female embodiment, feminine energy retreat. It was not, Christian, but there was so much I connected to in terms of understanding my role as a woman. I had learned about feminine energy, and just more about who I was in 2019. And from there, I started to really evolve and connect to that part of myself.
Now, first up, I thought she said Kieran, my partner, and I was like, oh, cute, our partners have the same name. And then I realized she said they went to a women's retreat together. So I was like, oh my God, maybe Kieran is trans, but he wasn't out then. So, he was still presenting as a woman, or maybe I misheard the name, and she's just meaning, another partner or a girlfriend or things like that. And I was like, oh my God, this Bethany has a girlfriend. Her partner's a woman. Bethany has a queer guest on her sex course. I was really excited. I was thinking all these things. I was like, this is progress. This is amazing. But no, I was wrong. She didn't say Kieran, and Kieran is not a trans man. She said Karen, and by partner, she meant they host a podcast together, not her romantic partner. Just like every other guest on these podcasts, guest Bethany here is another cis straight woman. And it's frustrating. I also have to add in at this point that the minute I hear people talking about feminine energies and spirituality in that sense, I start to feel a little dubious about the whole thing. I think a lot of the time people use those terms as part of, spewing a lot of Barnum statements and general statements which don't really mean much because people don't want to actually dive into the science behind the things they're talking about. So they just talk vaguely about feminine energies and a lot of people use this kind of nonsense talk to get people to buy expensive products like Goop and their psychic vampire repellent, or get people to buy expensive courses that don't actually teach them anything. Yeah? Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't just an anti-spirituality in general kind of rant. I think there are a lot of parts of certain beliefs, like Wicca, for example, that I really love and respect. That connection that people have with nature, the self-empowerment, the sense of community and family. Love all of that. So please don't think this is just me being adamantly against any kind of spirituality, because I'm not. But what I am against is when people use these vague terms like divine energy, feminine energy, or start talking about tarot or aligning chakras or talking to spirits. That's where I have to note the hell out of there, because 9 times out of 10 it's someone who doesn't really know what they're talking about, and they're scamming you to get you to pay for some expensive course or products or books that you don't need and won't actually help you. When I first started my channel, I actually focused quite a lot on debunking content and videos like that, and I am still an adamant skeptic to this day. That said, there are still some things that guest Bethany says that I do agree with. Listen to this.
Christian women need this too. Christians need to have these conversations openly and comfortably, and we need to figure out like what the source of the problem is and be able to solve it without having this, you know, like I was telling you earlier, this religious chokehold over, you know, our bodies. And we need to stop judging ourselves so much. We need to stop entering into so much shame with our bodies and our sexuality and our intimacy. Like, it's beautiful. It's God designed. Why aren't we connecting with this more? Why aren't we having more open conversations about this? It is sacred, but it's also something that here's the thing. It's not secretive. It's sacred, but it's not secretive, you know? And I think we've had that flipped for a long time where it's like, it has to be a secret. I cannot talk about this with anybody. And
I couldn't agree more, actually. I think this is brilliant. I love this.
Our desire with her sacred sexuality and where it was birthed from is really opening Pandora's box, if you will, and just being like, let's talk about everything. Let's not just say, you're a woman of God and this is who you are. And, this is modesty and this is purity culture. We were like, let's talk about the nitty gritty. Let's talk about kinky stuff. Let's talk about oral. Let's talk about desire and pleasure and orgasm. And that's sort of just where it was birthed from. Like,
we all know that Krista Collins is listening to this somewhere, absolutely seething, because we all know that Christian women shouldn't do any of those dirty, dirty things, according to Carissa in her books.
Somebody's saying it. Somebody's at least having the conversation around it without there being shame connected to it.
Well, I know when you mentioned the religious chokehold, which I totally relate to, and
I'm so glad this is being spoken about, and this is just the start of the conversation in this video, but I do wish that in general both Bethanys had gone into a lot more detail about the problems associated with those feelings of shame and where they come from, but it's okay, we can't have everything, I guess. If you do want to find out more about this for yourself, though, I do talk about this a lot in my reviews of Bethany's other courses, and in particular I quote a lot from a book by, I think it's Matthias Roberts, I want to say, which is a book on escaping shame and purity culture and all that sort of stuff.
When it comes to the religious chokehold, I've heard someone say like, oh, even when it comes to thinking of like Mary, the mother of Jesus, someone said like, do you think that God gave her like an extra special like level of ability to enjoy desire, or her and Joseph relationship? And he was like, it's awkward for people to think about like Mary having amazing sex. Like, no, that's not a Christian thing. Or
I'll be honest, this is not something I've ever thought of, and I don't wish to again.
Though we know as believers, like God created sex, it's like we have this separation, and we kind of deep in our hearts view it as almost like really loving sex, really embracing our desire as women is almost like worldly. So can you unpack that a bit for us? Like for all of those women who relate to that, I feel like, in my gut, I kind of feel like this is like, like not a thing Christian women should be about. Why is that? And how can we kind of overcome that hurdle of it?
Yeah, there is a sense of deconstruction to reconstruct in this area of faith, because it is a part of our walk as Christians. I say all the time that Christians should be having the best sex out there. We should be the loudest people in the room about sex, because we should be the ones knowing the most about how holy it is. And we allowed the enemy to take one of the most sacred, one of the most holy things and taint it and twist it and make it something that it's not. And so we've both become ashamed and disgusted with it. And so when we associate ourselves with sex, we're like, ooh, we think of porn, we think of like, videos, we think of strippers or prostitutes, we think of how the world has defined it instead of actually how God defined it.
I mean, you might be thinking that because of all you've been taught, but not everyone thinks that way. It's just unrealistic. And you don't need to be religious to think differently. As an atheist, I don't think of any of those things when someone brings up sex. I think of fun, connection, romance, passion, love, not strippers. I feel like guest Bethany is so close to understanding the issues with purity culture, more so than pretty much any of our Bethany's other guests. But again, she places the blame on the secular world being too different because of this straw man she's built up herself, instead of the extreme fundies who are using sex as a tool of control inside their own religions. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not the secular world that's the problem, it's what Christians have painted the secular world to be that's the problem. The secular world isn't like that. They're just building up this enemy to be scared of, where it's either like, you follow our exact rules and stay under our control, or you're a dirty harlot who's just out there doing anything, you know? There's no in between with these people.
I think a big thing is stepping back and reassessing, like really taking inventory of when I engage in sex as a married woman, or when I think about sex as just a woman in general, single, married, whatever, or as a man too, whose voice is the loudest?
Yeah.
Like, what teaching am I hearing? Am I hearing like a pastor? Am I hearing my dad or my mom? Am I hearing like the lies that somebody told me when I was a kid about my body? And start to reframe and build out new dialogue, internal dialogue of what actually is true. What is God's truth about it? He made an entire book in the Bible about sex.
I think this is a great bit of advice. Again, love this. I mean, I don't personally think you need to listen to what is God's view, but that might be helpful to some, I guess. But other than that, I think, unpacking all the shame that you've learned and reframing that and coming out of all that shame-free is great. Again, I wish they'd gone into more detail, but I don't hate it, and at least it is being mentioned at all. Oh my god, you'll love this bit though. Bethany gets so shady. Listen to this.
It's so frustrating to me to just see how low the bar is, and that these people who clearly weren't having thriving sex lives, are the ones that are like teaching and encouraging young couples in this area. I mean, I wasn't a young couple because I was 30 when I got married, but still like newer to the game in this area. And so I remember the two couples that were kind of in charge of our group, it was like week on, I don't know, sex or whatever. And they were both, the women were like high-fiving and stuff because they were like, once a week, that's fine for me. Like even less would be fine. And they were like talking about, they just don't have like much desire. And then the husbands were talking about how they're hired and all this stuff. And I just remember like sitting there and thinking like, what, like, first of all, like what is going on? And then just the fact that these are like the seasoned couples who are giving advice and basically just sending this message that, okay, women, we don't really like sex that much. We don't really need it that much. We don't have strong desire. It's really not that great. It's kind of like a service for the man. And I mean, that's not just even in Christian circles. You see that kind of messaging even broader.
Wow, right? Like, Bethany's shady, like I say, and I'm kind of here for it. Like, she has a good point, and I never thought I'd be sat here agreeing with Bethany as much as I am, but here we are. But, please, drop the names, Bethany. Come on, who are you talking about? Part of me is like, what if they see this? And if they do, I want to be there for their reactions. But that's just me being petty.
For that, I think one, because we're not having an open dialogue about sex and sexuality, there's a ton of shame, and yet there's still so much going on behind the doors that we don't see. I think the majority, unfortunately, of men are addicted to porn. And they're probably watching it. And because of that, they have a very unrealistic idea of what sex looks like. And so they're okay with not having sex more than once every couple of weeks or whatever, because they're getting their needs met elsewhere. And women are not enjoying sex because their husbands don't know how to please or pleasure them, because it's become a lazy job. And I say that with all the love and respect, because I had a porn addiction for 10 years. I understand what it's like to be there. And I understand what it looks like to be redeemed from that too.
Oh, so, okay, here's where they've lost me again. They make such good progress and then just throw it out the window. I hate this idea that if you've ever watched any kind of porn, then it's an addiction and it's bad. No, that is unrealistic. Not all porn is bad. Not inherently, anyway. Some is ethically made, some is empowering, some is focused on female pleasure. It's not an inherently bad thing, and I wish they'd stop pushing this narrative. That said, she is right that when you withhold comprehensive sex education from young people and don't educate people about the real benefits and problems associated with consuming that kind of content and how to figure out whether it's ethical or healthy or not, that is when problems do arise. I will give them that. It is a complex topic and one that I don't have time to go into in that much detail right now, but if you want to find out a little bit more and read two not completely opposing viewpoints, but two somewhat opposing viewpoints and evaluate for yourself where you fall in the debate, then I'd recommend reading XXX, A Woman's Right to Pornography by Wendy McElroy, and Pornland, How Porn Has Hijacked Our Sexuality by Gail Dines. I don't think either book is completely right or wrong, but both bring up some really excellent points and definitely get you thinking. So Wendy discusses how that kind of content, I'm trying not to say the word too much because YouTube, and feminism have both been critiqued by right-wingers before for causing the same problems, and how because of that they might not be so different. She also thinks that by censoring and suppressing any expression of female sexuality, this is going to be a detriment to all women in the long run. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Gail discusses how in order to make more money and keep viewers coming back, porn often dehumanizes and degrades the women involved, and I don't think I need to explain to you why that's a problem. If you'd like a discussion on how this affects real people, how this affects the consumers, in particular the boys and men who are watching, then I would recommend Peggy Orenstein's book Boys and Sex. I've recommended her book Girls and Sex before, and if you want to have a look at how this kind of content affects women and young girls, read that one. But for now, we're just going to be talking about the boys. So she examines in more detail in chapter 2 how growing up around so much porn affects teenagers and young men. She even acknowledges what I've been saying, which is porn is of course a broad category ranging from lovemaking, purportedly posted by real-life couples, to fetish videos, to eroticized violence and racism. It can be exploitative or ethically produced. It can be feminist. She goes on to say, curiosity around sex is normal. Sexual urges are normal. Masturbation is not only normal, but healthy and important to sexual development. Seeking out erotica and information about sex is normal too. And this is absolutely true and something that both Bethanys in this video completely fail to acknowledge, and it is to the detriment of their content. One of the most important points I think that Peggy points out is that with the invention of what is essentially porn on demand, which I don't think is a real word or phrase, I've just kind of come up with it, but I think it's appropriate. Anyway, she says, it's also given minors historically unprecedented access to sexually explicit media, most of it reflecting traditional gender dynamics and shot from the male's point of view, often a hostile, narcissistic male at that. Sex is portrayed as something men do to rather than with women. Women exist primarily as providers of a male orgasm. Their own pleasure is presented as a performance to that end. The men themselves appear joyless, mechanical. Given its boundless novelty and availability, contemporary porn raises questions about how young people's erotic imaginations will be shaped long before they've engaged in so much as a good night's kiss. The impact it may have on desire, arousal, behavior, sexual ethics, and their understanding of race, gender, and power in sexual expression. And like I say, it's not just a problem for men and boys. She goes on to say, it's clear that teenagers turn to porn, at least in part, for sex education, even as they claim to know that its content is about as authentic as pro wrestling. Girls in particular consult sexually explicit media for a template of male partners' expectations, despite being more than twice as likely as boys to be disturbed by its treatment of women. She goes on to say, and sorry, I know I'm reading a lot, but it's important and I think it brings up some good discussion points. She goes on to say that this is a problem because while young people and, teens and young adults, this happens to adults too, were saying, I can tell the difference between fantasy and reality. She says that, as it happens, is the instinctive response people give to any suggestion of media influence. None of us wants to think we're so impressionable, though we're quick to recognize that others are. But decades of research show that what we consume becomes part of our psyches. unconsciously affecting how we feel, think, and behave. When false information is embedded into a fictional story, people will come to believe it. Yes, reader, you would too. And those beliefs are strengthened over time, which is exactly what I've been saying, not only about things like violent pornography, but about abuse romance books too. When you have men repeatedly raping women and it being called love, romance, like something to be happy about, that gets in your head. It does affect you, even on an unconscious level or a subconscious level. And I get the exact same responses of people who don't want to admit that that can be dangerous too. I can tell the difference between fantasy and reality. I'm sure you think you can, but that's not what's happening under the surface. Peggy goes on to list pros and cons. So she says, on the upside, there's some indication that porn has a liberalizing effect. Heterosexual male users, for instance, are more likely than their peers to approve of same-sex marriage. On the other hand, they're also less likely to support affirmative action for women and to disagree or only tepidly endorse a statement, I want there to be equal numbers of men and women who are leaders in work, politics, and life. And it only goes downhill from there. College students who regularly consume porn are more likely than others to consider its portrayal of sex to be realistic. Porn use has been associated with Boyle's real-life badgering of girls for nude pictures. Both boys and girls who consume porn at younger ages are more likely to become sexually active sooner than their peers, to have more partners, to have higher rates of pregnancy, to view sexual aggression more positively and women more negatively, and to engage in the riskier and more atypical behaviours that porn exists. This is exactly the kind of thing we need to be discussing when it comes to sex education that talks about porn. I want more detail than Bethany and her guests provide. I want to find out, how do we figure out if this porn is ethically made? How do we assess if this porn is healthy? Is it helping us or is it hindering us? What impression is this giving us of, how we treat other people in sexual relationships? That's what we need to be talking about, not just this blanket statement of all porn bad. The thing is, I do think that they're right, that the lack of real female pleasure portrayed in porn does play a big influence in why a lot of heterosexual men don't know how to please a woman or don't care about pleasing a woman. And I do think we need better sex ed in general, but we also can't deny that a big way to combat that would be to start producing and promoting more ethically made porn and erotica and sexual content in general that has a focus on consent, respect, and pleasure. Porn made by women for women is a really good place to start with this, but again, that's only part of the solution, and that's not something we should be showing to young people and teenagers. That's for the adults out there. When it comes to young people and teenagers, it needs to start with a good sex education in general. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm rambling. It's a complicated topic is what I'm saying. Back to the video.
I understand what it looks like to have a very erotic, fun, pleasurable, intimate sexual relationship with my husband. And he had the same.
You know what? This is actually really nice to see from a fundie. So often you hear these horror stories, and most of the guests in Bethany's sex course here have these horror stories of yeah, he cheated on me, we didn't have sex much, it was awful, I didn't orgasm. So it's really nice to see someone who's just quite positive about their own relationships and marriage. And oh, never mind.
So there was a year where we had sex 10 times the whole year. And that's when infidelity happened, but we were both so disconnected. Something that a lot of us don't talk about is the sexual energy that's transferred from a man to a woman during sex, and how a woman can actually thrive in that.
Stop it. This is nonsense. Sexual energy transferring to a man it's nonsense. She never explains it. No one does. It just means nothing. Sex can absolutely have lots of really wonderful benefits, right? It can release endorphins, make people feel closer and more connected. But I just feel like when you say it's a man transferring energy to a woman, that's so problematic because 1, it's a nonsense phrase which means nothing and has no scientific basis. 2, you're making the woman so passive in all this. She's the receiver, not an active participant. Sex is something done to her, not something she participates in, and that is incredibly problematic. And 3, it is purposefully exclusionary. It's perpetuating this harmful idea that Real sex is only between a cisgender man and a cisgender woman and excludes everyone else, and that is absolutely not okay.
Like when a woman orgasms, it like elates her. It makes her a more potent woman, a more magnetic woman, a more abundant filled woman.
Yes, Bethany. Orgasms are good. How original. She keeps saying really good stuff and then disappointing me right after, you know?
Like, think of that. That's creation.
Yeah.
Like, you know, whether or not you got a baby inside of you, like, you are being filled with something so amazing. And I don't mean to over spiritualize this, but at the same time, why aren't we? You know, why aren't we seeing this like divine experience, you know, this earth shattering, mind blowing? And if this is not your story, if this is not what you're experiencing, we've got to learn. We've got to learn, unlearn, and then relearn, and really come back to this place of like, do you remember what it was like when you were 18 years old and you wanted to have sex so bad? Do you remember the turn on that you used to experience where you're like, all I want to do is experience sex? And now that it's literally available to you whenever you want, you don't care.
Yeah.
What is that? There's a reason why there's a disconnect. A lot of people think it's because, oh, you know, well, now I have it, so I don't really need it. You know, I don't really want it. But really, it's something more than that.
Well, it's not just this. There could be many things going on. It could be a hormonal issue. You could have other stresses in life. Your sex drive will fluctuate throughout your life, and so will your partner's, and that's completely normal. That's fine. If you're worried, go see a doctor. Like I say, it could be a hormonal issue. It could be something physiological. Maybe it's something you can work through in therapy. But it's also, like I say, completely normal for it to fluctuate.
What do you want? You know, what do you desire? What do you want to try? Let's get crazy. Let's do fun things in the bedroom. It's all available as long as it's consensual and you're not harming somebody in the bedroom, in the marriage bedroom. Have fun, you know?
You know, I was so on board with this until that last line, and then she just had to slip that whole marriage bed thing in there, didn't she? Like, do we think it's because this is what she really believes, or because Bethany only allows her guests to come on this sex course if they agree to shame people for having sex outside marriage? Just a question. Bethany then shares the wild, crazy, completely unbelievable bombshell that she has dared to learn about sex from non-Christian sources of information. Wild. She is out of control. A whole different person. Doesn't this just make all of her unchanged bigotry seem totally acceptable and like she's a total angel? We're now 20 minutes into this lesson and there's nothing new here that we haven't seen in her other content. I had forgotten how boring her courses were until I came back to these. But don't worry. We're getting something new soon. If you can call it that.
Changed the most for me when I've personally, like, especially over the past few years, I mean, I've only been married for 5.5 years. So really probably over the last 2 years, I kind of started this journey of personally working on myself and really growing and really, just even being open to other sources. You know, I was telling you off the camera, like non-Christian, like, oh my goodness, and it's my own personal work on myself that has changed the most for me in my experience in the bedroom. And so I love that y'all are helping women, like even learning how to, like, what do I desire? What is it that I want? And even get in touch with their desires, which can be, so can just feel like, whoa, like I don't, again, like, no, that's like men can desire sex, men can desire pleasure, but us as women, no, we don't really do that. What I've heard from so many women is that like, they don't even know, like, what do I desire? So can you talk to us a little bit about desire and how we can even take a step toward, like, I guess, getting in touch with our desires and getting to the point where we actually are excited about sex and excited about the energy we can get from that? Because I'm sure this is extremely foreign to a lot of women.
Okay, I've answered this before, but it's really simple. Experience, experimentation, education, and masturbation. Yeah. If you know your own body and what you like, then it makes it a lot easier when you're with a partner to be able to communicate with them what those things are. It's that simple. But these are all things that Bethany has been adamantly against in her course in the past. So it's interesting that she's now promoting it, but not taking down the past content. It's conflicting messages. It's very odd.
Desire for a lot of women has always been this taboo thing because it comes down to a recognition and a love for self. And as Christians, we have fully denied ourselves. We have, died to our flesh and, rejected it. And
yeah, Bethany, and whose fault is that?
There's a lot of reflection that happens when actually knowing and getting to know your deepest desires. Yeah. So it comes back to, okay, what do I want? What feels good? Desire and pleasure really go hand in hand. And I was explaining to this to a friend a couple of months ago. She was like, what is that? Like, how do you even find that? Mm-hmm. And I was like, what is it like for you? Like, how can you find pleasure in the smallest details? I was like, I'm just going to give you an example. When I go to bed at night, I find pleasure in a cold pillow, in laying in clean sheets, in my fan hitting my face because it feels so good.
Yeah.
And it's pleasure, but it's also the things I desire. Yeah. And we forget that we make desire this huge mountain of like, oh, I desire, to have $1 million, or I desire to live in a mansion one day, or to run a huge company, whatever it is, Yeah. Instead of like really honing it into these specifics. And when we can attune ourselves, our nervous system, to those desires, to, I want to wake up today and put my feet in the grass and have sun on my face for the first 5 minutes.
This point in the course would be a really great time to discuss things like the science behind arousal and desire, and how we can implement the things we learn about this actively into our lives. So I would like to see a discussion around things like the dual control model, where you have excitation and inhibition systems in the brain, which can cause or impede you to feel arousal. I'd like to see discussions about how to identify what cues trigger your desire and arousal. I'd like to see discussion of the differences between spontaneous and responsive desire being unpacked. I just want more. I just want some actual information in this, It doesn't feel like too much to ask, but apparently it is. If you like to find out a little bit more about that, by the way, then one of the books I always recommend on those topics is Emily Nagoski's Come As You Are, which is up there and I can't reach it, so I'm not going to grab it, but it's an excellent book, great resource. Guest Bethany does bring up a great point though.
And I think there's this really unfortunate stigma around it, because desire, I think, is linked to sin in this way of like, oh, I'm going to have these human desires, these fleshly desires, and if I say yes to them, I'm rejecting my Christianity. I'm rejecting God, and I'm choosing this over God, when that's not the case at all. Like,
which again would be brilliant to unpack and discuss more and learn more about, but she just doesn't.
So there's this balance of, I know, like, when I desire to have an orgasm, there's times where it's like, all I want to do is connect with my husband. But there's times where I'm like, I want you to make me come. I was like, I want the focus to be on me, Yes. And I will make my desire known. I will tell him, hey, this is what I want. And he is very happy to appease that, very happy to meet the need. Yes.
I'm glad they're being more open. I'm just not sure I needed to hear it like this. I also think there's ways to discuss these topics and educate people and reduce shame and stigma without someone like Guest Bethany here giving us specifics of her own sex life. I feel like that's where things get a little inappropriate and I don't like it, One of the things I'm always very aware of in my content is I don't like to share specifics of my own sexual experiences with you guys. I'll never tell you, and then I was with this person, and we did this, and I like this, and I'm into this. And that's why, like, I'm trying to word this in the right way. I will say that, like, I have discovered things about my sexuality in the last few years, and I'm very comfortable with who I am and who I like. But that's not something I feel the need to share with you guys in my videos, because it's none of your business. And I mean that in the nicest way. It's just, I think it's important to maintain boundaries, and you don't need to know who I'm having sex with or what kinds of sex I'm having, because that crosses a boundary into the inappropriate. And I find a lot of content creators don't maintain that boundary, and it really bothers me. Guest Bethany is doing it here. Girl Defined Bethany has done it many times, where she tells us details of her and Dave's sex life that we did not need to know. Colleen Ballinger was doing it completely inappropriately with children and teenagers about her husband. Not necessarily something I want to talk about in detail, but after he wasn't very nice to me about the whole Gabby Hanna thing, it came out that Jimmy Snow had been doing it completely inappropriately with so many members of his audience, both in private and as like a pattern in his main content. And it just, I don't think it's appropriate. You know, like, I'll happily tell you things about my relationship that are public, you know, the sort of things I'd tell my friends. You know, I'll say that, like, you know, Kieran's lovely, he did this nice thing for me, we have this great thing that helps us communicate. But you don't need to know the intimate things about us, because that is private. And you don't need to know the intimate things that I've done or experienced with other people, because that's private. And I just think maintaining that boundary is really, really important if you want to be an educational resource and not be inappropriate with your fans. Basically, that's it. So the point I'm trying to make is that while I'm glad Bethany and Bethany here are being more open and confident and comfortable, I think the way Guest Bethany is describing the specific things she says to her husband and the things that her and her husband like to do together is crossing that boundary into inappropriate, and we don't need to hear it. But that's just my thought. Some audience members may be more comfortable with hearing about this stuff than others. That is absolutely fine. I'm not going to tell you should feel uncomfortable with this, because if you don't, no problem at all. But I do think as a content creator, you have to try and be as appropriate as possible for the widest audience possible, you know? Like, I'm not going to do something because 2% of people are okay with it. I'm going to not do something to look after the 98%. Does that make sense? So, I don't know. I went a bit off script there. Sorry. Let's just lighten the mood and watch another clip.
And so that's the cool thing, is when we're in this, and I use this term and some Christians get a little throttled by it, but there is energy and frequency, and different emotions emulate different energies. And from your being, you will emulate that. Like, you will attract the specific vibration in which you are experiencing emotion. And so this is science. It's proven. This isn't like woo-woo, okay?
Bethany, is the science in the room with us right now?
So you can even start with non-sexual desires in your life. You could do that. And then eventually make your way to a sexual desire. Be like, oh, I want to know what it's like to have a G-zone orgasm. Or I want to know, you know, what it feels like for my husband to, you know, go down on me. Whatever it is. Like, we just have to start taking off the bars in which we've held ourselves in and confined ourselves in because of our need to please, which I think more so than not, our church leaders. You know, we do it to please the people that are around us. We're doing it for this sake of, you know, like spiritual, I don't know, showing up in some way that's that's not actually authentic and real. You know,
It's so
it's
true.
like, I'm just trying to prove my worthiness to you. So I'm going to lay down my life. I'm going to, you know, live from lack rather than living from an overflowing cup. And I think we've just got that twisted. Honestly, we're not filling ourselves up first.
But again, this is a good point. I like this. Good job. The rest of this lesson goes on to say the same stuff over and over again for the next 5 minutes, so we'll skip forward a bit. Actually, there is a bit that I do want to show you in here, which is just another clip of Bethany shading other Christian content creators again. I don't know why, I find this kind of hilarious. It's probably me being petty. She just comes across as very shady, but there's so much truth in it. It's kind of funny. I want her to drop names. Who is she talking about? Give us the tea. Also, that wouldn't be appropriate, but it's just the pettiness in me that's asking.
Like, they're quoting someone who's not like just a straight from the Bible. But I just want to ask you, like, how well has that been working for you so far? Just to be like straightforward, like it's not working for a lot of Christians. And there are a lot of really well-known or respected Christians where it's like, do you really want their sex life? Probably not. Do you really want their marriage? Probably not. And that's sad and unfortunate to say.
Also, I do find it funny that she is literally describing her past self and doesn't realize it. Anyway. But on a more serious note, something
that I'm curious about though, with all of this, and I know they want to hear you talk about oral, which we'll get to in just a minute, but something else that I think is a big piece of this, and y'all have talked about, you've done episodes on your podcast for Sacred Sexuality, but how self-pleasure plays into like I guess connecting with your desire, appreciating your body, understanding your body, and actually having a relationship with your body. Can you give us a snapshot of how this could be healing and helpful?
This is an excellent question and I love it.
Yeah, it's actually probably one of the most controversial things that we talk about for sure. But also I believe one of the most important things that we talk about, because in our faith, we have really connected self-pleasure. And thank you for using that word. I really appreciate it, because I walk away from the word masturbation because I don't think it is what it is. Yeah. So with self-pleasure, I think it's really important that it's talked about. And there's a whole episode on her Sacred Sexualities podcast about it. So if you want to get a deeper dive into that, feel free to listen to that.
Now, there was an interesting little cut in the video here. And I didn't make that. That was in Bethany's content. And we all know she doesn't really edit these courses. She doesn't add anything in. So when there is an edit, it's because something big has happened or been cut out or gone wrong or whatever. So I just really want to know what Bethany cut out here. I would love to see the unedited version.
But I believe what we've been taught as Christians is that self-pleasure is a sin. And there is nowhere in scripture where it says that. It says that lust is sin, and I believe that. I truly do. But I think we have connected our own exploration of our bodies and finding pleasure within our own bodies as something that is so bad. And if we do that, we are selfish. We're, not able to give our spouse what they need sexually. We're awakening love before it's time. And I think that's also a misinterpretation of scripture as well. Because I believe that I should always love myself. I should have access to that.
Yeah, you know what? This is bad. This is really bad. I wonder who would teach people that. Maybe, like, I don't know, literally you and your sister, Bethany.
And so it's something that self-pleasure can do is really reteach you what our bodies need, listening to the language of our bodies, of our genitals, of my vulva, of my clitoris, of my, nipples and breasts and my skin. I mean, oh my gosh. And when we can actually create a new definition around self-pleasure, it can be one of the most powerful ways that we connect ourselves while also staying in alignment with self-control. If you don't want to have sex before marriage, this is a great way to do that, especially in our day and time. We're not getting married at 14 and 15 anymore. Sorry. Like we're waiting until we're 30 or even later, you know? And the thing is that we're going to have arousal. We're going to have turn on. And it's a way that I can connect to myself. I can show myself a deep gratitude of love and appreciation and honor my body without lusting, without fantasizing, without looking elsewhere, because I have built that relationship so deeply within myself. I don't need to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So this is like another new bit. And let me tell you, I literally did the shocked cat face again when I watched this clip. I said in another video recently, I did that face when someone said something. That's not a good reference, but like I did. My face watching this was shocked cat, I'm telling you. Guest Bethany is literally advocating for masturbation before marriage. This isn't like the other woman before who was like, oh, well, you know, it's self-cultivation and you only do it when you're married so you can teach your husband to do this. No, this is full-on pro-masturbation before marriage. And she doesn't like the word masturbation. She doesn't like to use it because I don't know, I think there's some stigma attached to it for them, obviously. But that is what she's promoting. Masturbation before marriage. This is the exact opposite of everything our Bethany and Kristen have been teaching for years, including in Bethany's sex course for single women, in which her sister has a whole hour-long lesson about why masturbation is bad, both in marriage and especially before. I'm getting quite riled up about this. On the one hand, it is so nice to see our Bethany promoting Guest Bethany's message here, because I think it's a great one. It can be really healthy, it can be good for you, it can feel great. On the other hand, it is super hypocritical of our Bethany here to be essentially playing both sides while charging people money for it. In the same course, they're told that this is always wrong, never do it. It's okay in some circumstances, and yeah, it's all great, you go for it, girl. They're paying to hear 3 completely contradictory messages, and it's so confusing. I get that Bethany can change her mind and learn and grow, that's absolutely fine, but you need to at least say you've changed your mind, take down the lessons in which you're going on about how bad abortion is now. Abortion? Not what I meant to say in there. How bad masturbation is and how you're going to hell if you do it. And she needs to stop doing things like selling her £8 anti-masturbation ebook while charging people hundreds of pounds to tell them how good masturbation is as long as you don't use the M word for it. This is wild, I tell you.
It's only made it deeper and broader and hotter. Like my husband comes to me and he's like, this is the best sex of my life. Like, this is amazing, you know? And I'm like, oh yeah, like I just had a, pleasure practice this morning or whatever. And
as opposed to what? As opposed to with who? The woman he cheated on you with?
It keeps me in this sexual flow state of being able to attract, which is what we're supposed to do. Like, I should want to attract my man. We have glorified the messy bun and the sweatpants for life. Like, we as women, we have done that. And I'm tired of it. I want to look hot.
Amen.
I want to wear a cute dress. I want my husband to grab my butt. I want him to spank me and be like, damn woman, get in the bedroom right now, Again,
didn't need to hear this, but good for you, I guess. Then there's a ton of promotion for the both of them, blah, 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 blah. And then Bethany ends the lesson by bringing up oral sex.
100,000%. I totally agree. And this is something that, especially since getting married, I have in many ways changed my mind on, or maybe it's not even changed my mind, but come to better understand. And I will say, ladies, that the podcast episodes on her sacred sexuality, all about self-pleasure, have been so helpful in kind of reframing this in my conservative upbringing and prudish ways. Like this, for whatever reason, I just have always, been okay with and never understood the issue with, but it's oral. When it comes to oral, I have been honestly shocked when I've talked about it online, the pushback and specifically from Christians, even one-on-one conversations I've had where, women are like, oh, we've discussed that is just absolutely not on the table, not because it's just a preference, but because of like sin. And so I am so confused about why, oral is just so controversial.
Me too, Bethany. Me too.
To me, it's like, I think oral is amazing. I like giving, I like receiving. I am like a huge fan of it.
Yes.
Again, boundaries, please. I didn't need to know this. Set some boundaries with your audience and stick to them, please. We need to know less about each other. I honestly find it concerning when I know more about the specifics of someone like Bethany Beal's sex life than I do about, say, my own best friends.
Outside of being able to like 69 your spouse, it is a very selfless act of being able to fully give to your partner in this way. And I think that's what I love the most about it, because like when I give my husband head, it's like, oh, I'm doing this because I absolutely love you and I love seeing you pleased. Where we just have to, once again, unlearn. It's about this process of like, why do I have these judgments? And all it is a reflection of themselves. It's like the judgment that they might be feeling about somebody else doing a sexual act that they're uncomfortable with just means that there's so much discomfort living inside of them. And so to give yourself the grace, to give yourself the opportunity to really step back and be like, is that me saying that? Is that like, whose voice is this? Because this could be a really beautiful way to give to my partner. This is a really beautiful way to receive from my partner. I am not dirty. I'm clean. I'm beautiful. I'm like this is one of the most holiest parts of my body. This is where life is built.
Yeah, this bit is absolutely fine. I like this, no complaints here. What I would like to see, though, is Carissa Collins watch this course and react to it. I would pay to see that. I would absolutely pay to see that. And then, and then the lesson ends. And then the lesson ends with the moment that any of you who browse the Fundy Snark subreddit have probably been waiting for. This is the clip I posted on there as soon as I saw it, because I had to hear someone else's opinion on it. Just watch this and enjoy.
There is something very erotic, very attractive when, as a woman, we can gaze upon his cock and be in complete awe of like, oh my gosh, you are so hot. Like, I love your penis. I want it inside my mouth. I want it inside my pussy. I want it. And I hope this language is okay to use.
Yeah,
but,
no, it's fine.
Okay. But, these are the things that like turn your man on. He wants to know you want him. So we can see this as a mutual beneficial exchange of like, yes, I want to do this for you. I want to see you aroused and turned on. And oh my gosh, there's nothing hotter.
And there we go. That's basically the end of this lesson. It's all just repetition after this. I'm a little speechless. Let's just move on to the next lesson, shall we? This is Dealing with Sexual Betrayal in Marriage with Bonnie Burns. Now, I thought this was going to be a lesson on dealing with betrayal. Like, say he's cheated on you. How do you heal from that? How do you get over it? But it's not. It's just 45 minutes of porn is really bad. And that's it. It's just a demonization of pornography, not anything actually useful or practical. I might be remembering wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Bonnie Burns is the same woman who, in one of the other lessons, told Bethany's viewers to push the clitoral button and wouldn't use the word vulva, which were interesting choices. Oh, actually, funny, I can't remember if it was Bonnie or not, but funny story about that clitoral button line. I say funny. Embarrassing for me, but I think you guys might have a giggle out of it. So, you might know that my favourite band has been my favourite band since I was about 16. And they're a little folk band from here in the UK called Stornoway. and I love their music. Absolutely love it. It's cute, it's twee, it's clever, it's heartwarming. I love everything about their music. I've seen them play live like 10 times, maybe more. And a few months ago, their bass player Ollie gave me and my friend Daisy all access passes to go see them in Sheffield. And we went for dinner with the guys before the show. We hung out with them after. It was a dream come true, right? I absolutely loved it. I'm meeting my heroes, hanging out with them. They're great. And somehow, after the show, we'd all had a bit to drink, and the topic of my YouTube channel came up. And somehow my videos on Bethany Beal's sex course were mentioned, because I think they were maybe newly out at the time, doing quite well. And I just want you to picture this, right? I'm backstage at the Lead Mill, one of the most iconic music venues in the UK. And I'm with these three guys who have been my heroes for like the last 15 years. And they're such sweet guys. They like birds and nature and wholesome stuff and going on walks with their kids and dogs. You know, like that's their life. And I ended up having to explain my work with the line, well, and then she said that we just need to press the clitoral button. Which was, of course, immediately followed by me, like, profusely apologizing for telling that story and being like, I can't believe I'm here with you guys and saying those words. But Brian was an absolute gentleman about it, and he had a good giggle, and he ended up asking me some genuinely really good, like, sex ed questions, and we had a good discussion about it. You know, he was asking, like, what sort of misinformation people spread and what's the correct information and this sort of thing. And it was an experience. I never thought, like, back when I was a little 16-year-old sneaking into Sheffield, and when I should have been at sixth form to go buy their album on the day it came out, like, I didn't think that 15 years later I would be saying the words push the clitoral button to those guys. Thankfully I didn't scare them off too much, and Ollie still asked me to hang out last time I was down in London. But yeah, it always really hammers home to me how bizarre this stuff is, because I think when you make this kind of YouTube content, you get used to the weird stuff, right? You get used to people saying stupid stuff, spreading stupid misinformation, ridiculous books, you know? Like, and this was kind of part of the problem I spoke about in my latest Zodiac Academy video, where I was like, the problem is when you read so much stuff like normalizing violence against women, it becomes normal and you don't get shocked by it, right? Me and Alizi were talking the other day, and she was saying how, like, oh, I'm so used to Colleen Hoover now that, like, none of her stuff shocks me. And I was like, same. And that's a problem, right? Because it's so weird. Same with this. The sex courses are so bad and there's so much weird misinformation in here, it kind of becomes normal to us over time and it stops shocking us as much. And then it's only when you're in like a real world situation with really nice, normal people and you say those words, you're like, oh God, what am I doing with my life? So that's the story of how I embarrassed myself a little bit in front of Stornoway, but they are wonderful, wonderful guys. So I don't think they thought I was too weird. We'll see. But kind of the moral of the story is, please don't ever forget how weird this stuff is. Like, still make sure you're going out there into the real world and, like, understanding that this isn't normal. That last clip from Bethany and Bethany, you wouldn't say that stuff to a stranger in the real world. So why are we hearing it online? Anyway, with that a little aside, let's watch Bonnie's lesson.
Hey y'all, I am so excited to have Bonnie Burns with us. And now she actually shared with us all about marriage and intimacy and orgasm inside the Ultimate Sex Course for Christian Women. And that was such an incredible session. And if you follow me, you know that I am constantly raving about her book, Unlock Your Orgasm, which is so unique and unlike anything I have ever seen, especially from a Christian perspective for Christian women. It is so needed and absolutely amazing. But there's a whole another side to Bonnie and what she has to offer, and that has to do with sexual betrayal. And now I know this is something that we have had a ton of requests for. As a wife, if you experience this, what do you do? Where do you go? How do you find hope? Is there any hope? And Bonnie has so graciously agreed to come on and share her wisdom with us. And
as you've just mentioned, is that I am also a wife who's been betrayed sexually. My husband kept his secret hidden on and off for most of our marriage. And praise God, he's now in solid recovery. He's followed a lot of the steps. He's followed pretty much all of the steps that are recommended for recovering from sexual addiction. And it's a day by day thing. And I just, praise Yahweh for it.
Look, I don't like to judge other people's relationships, but what I will say is that if this has really been going on for most of your marriage, I'm sorry, love, but just dump him. Dump that man. You deserve better.
So the other reason I'm equipped to do this is that after I earned my Christian counseling bachelor's from Liberty University, I took 2 years to become trained as an APSAT certified partner coach. And what that means is APSATS stands for, it's a big one, Association of Partners of Sex Addicts Trauma Specialists. So at APSATS, we believe that when a wife discovers problematic sexual behavior in her husband, it is a traumatic experience. So we work from that perspective, that this is trauma and this is healing from trauma.
You know what? I have thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm not a counselor myself, so I'm not going to comment. And if it helps people, then who am I to complain? I'm going to set this point aside and let actual counselors and therapists discuss that if they want to. Bonnie then promotes a podcast that she runs, in particular an episode where you can hear all about how and when she and her co-hosts found out their husbands were cheating on them. It's a choice, and like I say, we should all know less about each other.
And there's a whole episode devoted to our D-Day stories, so you can go over there and listen if you want to know more. Yeah.
Now, surprisingly though, one thing that I do like about this lesson is that unlike anything else that Bethany has put out in her numerous sex courses, this one is actually a lesson. Like, Bonnie sits down, she has a series of slides which you can download as a PDF and follow along with, and she's actually giving a structured lecture that she's planned out before. It's not just rambling nonsense for 45 minutes, there's a point to it. As much as I don't think the content is actually good, I do have to commend this because she's actually put some effort into it, which is more than we can say for any other lesson in these courses. So Bonnie starts by talking about how sexual betrayal can mean cheating, or it can just mean viewing porn on occasion. And because of this, she says,
because it is not talked about very much within Christian circles. When my big discovery happened at 15 years of marriage, I didn't have any friends talking about this. So we navigated all by ourselves and not well. So I want you to know you are not alone. There are approximately 33 million betrayed Christian wives in the U.S. And I get this number from the 2016 Pew Research study that says that 64% of men who attend church regularly view porn monthly. So if you think about 10 guys at your church, 6 of them are probably watching porn. And if those 6 are married, or any number of that 6 is married, those wives are being betrayed whether they know it or not. So you are not alone.
So I get the sentiment here, but 1, I don't think watching porn is as bad as actually cheating. 2, this might not even be a betrayal for some people. I know I wouldn't have an issue if my partner was watching it occasionally. I wouldn't call that betrayal, and I think for most other people, they wouldn't call it betrayal either. 3, it fails to acknowledge differences in anything, to be honest. Like, there can be different types of porn, and that can factor into whether it's betrayal or not. It really isn't this one-size-fits-all, and it's all bad narrative that she's portraying. So, like, I know just personally, if my partner was watching stuff which degraded and hurt women, I'd be like, what the hell, you dumped? I wouldn't feel betrayed, but I'd probably feel scared and leave him. Another example might be if you're part of a minority group and you find out that your partner is watching adult content that degrades or fetishizes that group in some way. Again, you would probably feel betrayed and scared and should dump them and leave them. Whereas if you find out your partner just casually watches a few videos here and there and it's something you've both agreed is okay, then there's no betrayal. Where's the problem? On the other hand, for some people, if you find your partner is, for example, crossing boundaries, maybe following very specific content creators, or paying an individual to provide personalized content or private message with a content creator, then I would personally call that betrayal, and I know a lot of other people would, but again, not all people would. Some people would be fine with that. So this idea that anyone who watches porn is betraying their partner is an exaggeration and it's not looking at the nuances, and I don't think it's really fair. This idea that 33 million women are being betrayed isn't accurate. It victimizes women that aren't victims at all, and it really undermines the actual victims who have been betrayed and harmed. And what about all the women who have been betrayed but aren't Christians? Like, does Bonnie just not care about them? Do they not count? Should she not include them? I don't know. I find this number and statistic an unhelpful oversimplification that didn't need to be in here.
What does culture say? What does culture say about porn? It says the opposite of what God says. Boys will be boys. A little porn doesn't hurt. All guys look. So what's the big deal? And these are even some phrases I've heard Christian men use to justify their behaviors. All right. So culture can influence us heavily. And that's why I want to bring to light what God really says about sex and marriage.
The thing is, Bonnie would say that I'm part of this culture. I hate that they use culture for everything outside the church, because you do realize you have a culture within your church too, right? Anyway, where was I going with this? It's odd because I, as someone who is part of the secular culture that I guess Bonnie would say, and I have an issue with these statements too. Really do. But I can't help but feel like, again, they're building up this straw man here against anyone who isn't in their religion, who isn't a member of their religion. Again, please look at those books I mentioned in the beginning that look at porn from a feminist perspective. Those are secular resources. They are part of the culture that Bonnie is talking about and present arguments both for and against pornography. Nowhere in either of those books do they try and justify it as, well, everyone does it, boys will be boys. So I don't think Bonnie is, again, being realistic or helpful here. And I also don't think that her counter, which is just, well, therefore it's all bad and we need to ban it all, is helpful either. That doesn't actually solve or help anything. Bonnie is misguided in that she's blaming the inherent existence of pornography itself instead of the real problems, which are when it's made by abusive and exploitative men, when women are dehumanized, objectified, and exploited, when viewers and consumers misuse the content in some way, when an individual breaks trust or oversteps a boundary surrounding it. I'll keep saying it, there's nothing inherently harmful about this kind of content, but there are ways in which it can be harmful. It's a complex discussion which does require nuance. That said, what I do appreciate is how Bonnie goes on to tell women that if their partner has betrayed them some way, whether that's by watching porn or cheating, then it's not their fault. It's not something they caused. I love that. It's an important thing to say, and I think that's really good. I was also shocked and pleasantly surprised by this interjection from Bethany.
I really appreciate you saying that, Bonnie, because there's actually a comment I got like quite a few times recently on my Instagram of women saying basically like, okay, if you are not giving your husband enough sex, or say you're in postpartum and you're not able to be with him intimately, that you should basically expect that he has to have a release somewhere. So you can almost just expect he's going to look at porn, and that's just kind of a part of the way men are. And I am like continuously shocked when I hear Christian women just say that these are married women like in the first 5 to 10 years of marriage. And oftentimes they say this because another older woman has passed this on to them. Like one woman told me that her older sister was like, hey, you can just kind of expect this. So you don't need to ask him about it. You just know those first few months postpartum, he's probably going to be looking at porn. And what I hear you saying is that like that is not okay biblically.
No, and thank you for bringing that up, because that is the wrong teaching from church.
Again, I think it's really good that Bethany is finally standing up and saying there's no good reason for your partner to overstep boundaries that the two of you have set. I think this is really great, and it shows a lot of maturity on her part. What I like less is how Bonnie goes on to perpetuate some harmful myths about that kind of adult content in general.
That is where culture has influenced the pulpit. And there's also things that men will use to justify their behavior. There was a study somewhere that talks about ejaculating helps the prostate. Well, you know what? That's not a reason to use pornography, because not only do we have all the scriptural evidence, but pornography promotes and condones sex trafficking. Pornography, whether you pay for it or not, I mean, it's free. Still, you're watching it promote sex trafficking. So I do not want my husband condoning sex trafficking in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, same. I don't want my partner promoting sex trafficking either, but not all adult content does that. With the rise of certain platforms, who I can't name on YouTube, more and more adult content creators are able to produce their own content on their own schedule, the way they want to, and keep all their money. There are certain companies within the industry who are avidly against sex trafficking and have good ethics when it comes to protecting their performers. You can create and consume adult content ethically. It takes a bit more work, sure, but it's possible. And I think it's important we keep reminding people of that.
There's only one species that will die without sex, and that's a ferret. I'm not sure if it's the female or the male, but humans, we will not die without sex. There's the blue, this is a crude euphemism, the blue balls kind of thing. They won't die. They might have some discomfort for a day or two, but what's more important, that they honor God's values or that they let their flesh yank them around?
This was quite funny. I was like, sorry, but has Bonnie been watching my videos? So first, She adds slides and structure like I suggested Bethany speakers do in my last videos, and now she's quoting my ferret short. One of the things I discuss quite a lot on my YouTube channel is misogyny and calling out harmful points of view, like when melodramatic men think they're owed sex, or they're gonna just die if they don't have sex soon. But did you know this is actually a reality for female ferrets? When a female ferret goes into heat, they obviously start producing a lot of the hormone estrogen. The problem is, if a ferret can't find a male to mate with, then this estrogen builds up to toxic levels in its tiny little body. Too much estrogen and the female ferret's bone marrow stops producing red blood cells. No new red blood cells, oxygen can't be transported around the body, the ferret literally dies. Female ferrets have to have sex in order to keep living. So next time a man is being dramatic about not getting any, just remind him that at least he's not a female ferret. Look, Bonnie even has purple in her hair like I do. Bonnie Burns is a Rachel Oates superfan and you cannot convince me otherwise. Then this just goes on for minutes and minutes longer.
So what I'm going to say is that porn is the enemy's weapon against marriage. Satan hates marriage, mostly because marriage represents the gospel. Satan does not want us reconciled to Yahweh.
I thought, like I said in the beginning, this was a lesson about dealing with betrayal, not a lecture on why pornography is evil. I just find this all unnecessary and repetitive.
Piece of personal responsibility for us to live out is that we also have to do a self-assessment around our sexual integrity. And I did this. This is personally one of my big pieces of my healing journey and to become whole is that I had to really agree and take ownership that I was reading novels that were not a godly sexuality. I was putting things in my brain, erotica early on. And even when it wasn't necessarily an erotica book, there's still books that have too much intimate sexual description and they put pictures in your head. And that's not what God wants.
Yeah.
And also you have to self-assess the type of things you're looking on TV, social media of any kind. What kind of music are you listening to? All of it plays into your sexual integrity.
Go on, Bonnie. Share what books you were reading. Go on, drop your Goodreads in the comments. I know you're watching this video. Bonnie then says that you need to speak to your husband about his sexual ethics and this.
It will help you, the two of you, as you have this conversation, you can come up with a marriage statement about your sexual values. And in this conversation, because you've done a lot of thinking, you can explain your expectations around the marriage bed and how it is to be undefiled and what that means to you. So we've talked about you. We're going to move into what about my husband? He's the one that's caused me this pain. What about him? Well, I suggest that you begin a conversation and you talk to him about your sexual ethics.
And honestly, I don't hate this. I don't think I like calling it sexual ethics. You could just say your values, your needs, your wants, your boundaries. But overall, communicating within the relationship, setting boundaries together, that's all good really. And I think it's genuinely good advice. But sadly, this is the only advice she gives. Have a conversation with your partner. She says it like it's groundbreaking and then she just ends her lecture there. And I was like, where's the rest? How about you talk to us about how to compromise or not when your sexual ethics don't align? How do you set boundaries? What does a fair boundary look like? What sorts of things should you both be considering? And okay, let's say your partner has cheated on you or even you've cheated on him. What then? Like, how do you make that decision between leaving him and giving him another chance? When do you say enough is enough and just leave? Let's say you do decide to forgive him and work on things, and what does forgiveness look like? How do you rebuild trust again? Where do you even start? What conversations should you be having? What actions should you both be taking together? Is there ever a point where people should just definitely 100% go to therapy? They're the questions I want asking, and we just don't get them. I think I just wanted more than just 25 minutes of porn bad and then one line about have a conversation. Bethany then just asks a couple of questions, which aren't anything new. They're stuff we've heard before. Bonnie replies with things she's already said in this lesson, and then it just ends with minutes of self-promotion from Bonnie about her podcast and books, and that's it. That's the new lessons. That's the extent of the content. That is all we get. To conclude, let's take a moment to just unpack everything we just watched, yeah? These 2 lessons were, for all my snarkiness, actually miles above the rest of the course. The Bonnie Burns lesson was much better structured and thought out, which is commendable, even if the content itself wasn't particularly helpful. And the Bethany Phillips episode was much less shame-inducing and progressive, which was really nice to see. I think it's great that our Bethany, Girl Defined Bethany, is clearly learning and growing, and her guests are taking steps to make their lessons better. However, there are still plenty of problems with these lessons and with this course in general. There's problematic information, there's misinformation. Bethany still remains incredibly hypocritical by selling materials which directly contrast the things she's promoting in these 2 lessons, and overall, they were still really boring, and I wish Bethany and her guests had a few stronger boundaries, you know? But anyway, they're just my thoughts, and I would love to hear what you all have to say down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching today. I'm going to take a leaf out of Bethany's book and end this video with a little shameless promotion, because I kind of always forget to do it in much detail, but here we go. If you're new here, it would be wonderful if you subscribed. If you liked the video, please leave a like, please leave a comment. All that engagement really helps. You can share the video around on social media. That's a great help too. Thank you so much. If you would like to support my work, then I do have a Patreon where you can see video notes sometimes, behind the scene photos and videos, just general artsy photos that I take. And you can also get exclusive stickers and prints from me every 3 months. I also have merch available if that's something you'd like to check out. I have my first poetry book available on Amazon. It's called Reflections on Healing, and I'm releasing my second book, which I can announce is going to be titled Outside. That is going to be released in a couple of months, and it's a big chunky art book filled with photography, art, essays and poetry. So it's a big chunky boy full of everything. I'm really proud of how it's going together. Finally, if you want to go follow me on Instagram, you can find out more about the book that I'm working on. You can see lots of posts about my life, my friends, my little Kyra Bean, who is begging for a walk right now. You can see photos I've taken, cute outfits I like, all that fun stuff over on Instagram. It's just at Rachel Oates with a 0, not an O. And finally, why is there so much to say? Finally, I do have a second channel called More Rachel Oates, where I post casual makeup videos, art videos, gaming videos, book hauls, fun stuff like that. So you can go check that out if you want. Everything will be down in the video description. Go check it out if you can. But for now, I think that's everything I want to say. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for sticking through this little self-promote-y ramble at the end. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm very tired. I need to go eat some food. And I will see you guys again soon. Bye.